I don't know exactly when I started losing sleep, but I know the moment everything changed. It was that night when I heard a noise coming from inside my bedroom wall, 3 sharp knocks, as if someone or something was inside. My name is Etham. I'm 32 years old, and before all this happened, I was a fairly normal person. He wasn't the type to scare easily. I grew up watching horror movies, playing Resident Evil in the dark, hearing ghost stories in Boy Scouts, and making fun of most of them. I've never been afraid of the dark. I never believed in spirit. I have always been logical, rational, even too much. Maybe that's why no one took me seriously at first. After the divorce, I rented a small house on the outskirts of São Lourenço, a small town surrounded by mountains. I thought it would do me good to isolate myself a little, get away from the hustle and bustle of the big city, breathe cleaner air, try to understand what had gone wrong in my marriage. The house was simple, old, with those heavy wooden windows and a porch covered in colonial tiles. I was enchanted with the place. It smelled of the woods, of old things, of silence. Only later did I realize that it also smelled like something forgotten. The first week was peaceful. I woke up early, walked the trails that cut through the forest, read, cooked, and sometimes I called my sister Lucy just to hear a familiar voice. But at night, the weather changed. The wind made the tree branches scratch the windows like long nails. The floor of the house creaked as if someone was walking on it. Normal things in an old house, I thought, but it wasn't just that. On the third night, I noticed a thin, almost invisible crack in the wall behind my bed. I found it strange because I have a habit of noticing details, and it certainly wasn't there before. The crack was vertical, right in the center of the wall, as if it separated the room in two. I stared at it for a few minutes, curious, but I let it go. It was just an old house, and old houses crack. But that's exactly where the knocks came from. 3 rings. 1, 2, 3. As if someone was trapped inside the wall and was trying to get my attention. Not very loud, but loud enough to wake me up. At the time, I froze. I lay on my side with my eyes open, my heart hammering in my chest. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe an animal, a possum, an armadillo. I don't know. But the house had no attic or basement, and that wall faced straight into the woods. I slowly got up, turned on the light, and looked at the crack. It was there. The same. Thin, straight, deep, almost like a crack. I touched my hand. Cold. Much colder than the rest of the wall. The next morning I tried to open the wall. I bought a chisel in town and started digging around the crack. With each blow, the wall crumbled too easily, as if it weren't really solid, as if there was something behind it, and indeed it had. After hours of scraping, digging, coughing with the white powder sticking in my throat, I found a strange thing, a kind of partition made of old wood, darkened by time, like a door, without a handle, a built-in invisible door sealed for decades. My stomach turned. I stood there for a time I didn't know how to measure, kneeling in front of that darkened wood with the chisel still in my hand, and my heart beating so hard that I could hear it in my ears. The wall behind my bed hid a door, a damn door with no handle, no visible hinges, no indication that it was supposed to be there. That didn't make any sense. None. I leaned my sweaty forehead against the edge of the opening and closed my eyes, trying not to vomit. The dust from the wall still floated in the air, and the yellowish light of the late afternoon left everything with a sickly tone, as if time itself had stopped in there. The wood was cold, damp, and had a peculiar smell, something between musty, wet earth and an old, sweet, almost sickly perfume, a smell that seemed to want to cling to me, infiltrate my pores. I went back to town the next day and bought a headlamp, sturdier gloves, and a dust mask. I didn't say anything to anyone. How was I going to explain that I had found a hidden door inside my room? Just thinking about it, I could already hear Lucy laughing on the phone. "You're watching too many movies, Etham." But it wasn't a movie, and that wouldn't leave me alone. The next night, when silence fell like a thick curtain over the house, I sat down again, in front of the excavated crack. Now it was a well-defined hole where the wood of the door stuck out arrogantly, as if it had waited a long time for this moment, as if you were inviting me, or challenging. I illuminated every inch of the structure. It really was a door. Tall, narrow, with vertical boards and marks from rusty nails. In the middle there was a carved symbol, so shallow that it could barely be seen, an incomplete circle cut by lines that intertwined like dry roots. I tried, searching for something similar later, but didn't find anything that matched, not even close. I decided to try to open it. I used the chisel as leverage and forced it where I imagined the side would be. The wood creaked. It was a strange sound, not like normal wood. It was more hollow, as if there was a space behind, a vein. The air that came out of the crack when I finally managed to move a board made me flinch. It was heavy, old. It smelled like something forgotten, not only in time, but in the very concept of presence. It was as if that smell should no longer exist, like it was sealed for a good reason, but I'd already gone too far. I removed a few more boards, revealing a dark, small opening, like the entrance to a closet. But inside, there were no shelves, no objects, no wall on the other side. Just a tunnel, narrow, aged wood, as if it had been built by someone many decades ago, then hidden, stuffy, buried behind the bedroom wall. The tunnel descended at a slight slope and seemed to breathe. I swear to God, the air inside him oscillated subtly as if it were alive, as if there was something deep inside that was pulsing, an almost imperceptible rhythm, but constant. I should have closed everything right there, sealed back, forgotten, but I couldn't. I illuminated the interior with the flashlight. The beam revealed the ground covered in a thin layer of untouched dust and small footprints. That's right, footprints, lowercase, like a child. They were going in one direction, inward. None came back. My muscles seized up. Logic tried to convince me that it was impossible, that those footprints could be those of an animal, but they weren't. They were human feet, barefoot and recent. No dust accumulated on them, as if something was still there. Still, I crawled inside. The space was tight. The ceiling almost touched my head, and the smell intensified with every meter. I started sweating inside the mask. The wood creaked beneath my knees and hands. The tunnel didn't seem to end. The light from the flashlight was shaking, and at a certain point I had to stop, panting with my heart racing. That's when I heard it. A whisper, low, far away, echoing from the darkness. It wasn't an exact word, but it had a rhythm, a lament perhaps, a calling. The voice sounded childish and hungry. Anyone there? My own voice sounded ridiculous, choked, silence, then something crawling, right in the background, as if nails were scratching wood. I backed away, choking with panic. When I came out of the tunnel, I was shaking. I sat on the bedroom floor, my face drenched in sweat. My eyes never left the entrance. I knew what I needed to do, to close, seal, pretend I never found out. But I couldn't sleep that night, not even the next one. The knocking returned. Now there were no more than 3. There were 4, then 5, then 6. The wall seemed to want to remind me. I saw something I shouldn't have seen. And then the dreams began. I was inside the tunnel, always crawling, but it wasn't exactly me, it was a child. My hands were small, scratched, and on the other side in the darkness there were eyes, several, blinking slowly, observing, waiting. Something called me, always with the same whispered voice. "Etham, Etham, you're back!" I woke up screaming, sweating, crying. I started locking the bedroom door. Afterwards, I started sleeping on the sofa in the living room, but even there, I heard the knocking. They followed, stronger, more impatient, until one night I heard laughter. It wasn't high, not exactly happy. It was a short, contained laugh, as a child, echoing inside my room. The light blinked. The wind blew strong, making the tiles creak. I ran into the room, trembling, armed with a piece of wood, and found the tunnel door open. Yes, it was open. The boards I had removed were on the floor, and the black hole stared at me like a hungry mouth. And inside, something was crawling towards me. The door was open. I didn't want to look, but my body moved as if it had a mind of its own. The piece of wood was still in my hands, heavy, my grip becoming firmer and firmer, as if I wanted to crush the anger and fear that gripped me. But deep down, I knew that fear wouldn't be enough to stop me from going down to the bottom. Something in me said I needed to go, that there was no turning back. I looked into the darkness of the tunnel. It seemed even deeper now, more insidious, like a mouth that swallowed all the light around it. I could hear something crawling inside, but it was no longer the sound of something small and innocent, like a lost child. Now, there was something more, something bigger, something that was conscious of me. It was waiting for me. I took the first step. The wood creaked under my weight. The sound echoed through the empty house, resounding like a muffled scream, as if the entire house was waiting for what I would do. I took a deep breath, trying to control the panic that was beginning to rise in my throat, and moved forward. The tunnel seemed to tighten as I moved, narrower and narrower, until my shoulders were pressed against the rotten wooden walls. The air grew heavy, filled with a suffocating smell of mold and something else. Something I didn't want to identify. Something that made me feel that my presence there was not welcome. But I continued. My footsteps echoed, and the sound of crawling was there too, closer now, as if it were following me. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I knew I shouldn't see it. I shouldn't face what was inside. However, I couldn't go back. Something was pulling me forward. I continued. The tunnel seemed to have no end, but I couldn't stop. The light from the flashlight flickered in my hand, illuminating only a few feet ahead, making the shadows seem wider, more aggressive. I was losing control. I felt a cold growing in my chest, a cold that had nothing to do with the air temperature. It was a cold presence, a sensation I could no longer ignore. It was then that I saw her. The shadow appeared to my left, rising from the wooden wall, as if the wood itself had distorted to give way to a dark figure. It had no defined shape, but its eyes were what I feared most. They glowed an amber hue like two headlights in the dark. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what I wanted, but his eyes paralyzed me. I stopped. My entire body shook, as if the air around me was being sucked away by darkness. The flashlight blinked once more, and for a moment I was completely blind, enveloped by a thick darkness that swallowed me whole. I could feel the warm breath of something on my back, but I didn't turn around. I didn't dare. Whatever was there, it didn't want me to see. The flashlight finally came on again, and that's when I saw the hands. There were several, small and bony, coming out of the walls like roots, stretching around the tunnel. They were hands, but not human. They were not made of flesh and blood. They seemed to be made of something much older, sicker, as if the wood had turned to skin, and the skin had turned to claws. They crawled across the floor, the ceiling, the air, as if they were everywhere at once. They were surrounding me. I tried to go back, but something pushed me back forward. It was a strange sensation, an invisible force that pulled my feet, that pushed me towards that thing. I couldn't move. I couldn't run away. The tunnel narrowed even more, forcing me to bend over to continue. Every movement I made was more painful, as if the house was swallowing me, compressing me in its bowels. I no longer knew what was real and what was just a nightmare. And then, the voice. It didn't come from anywhere. It wasn't whispered, it wasn't shouted, it was like a thought in my head. And I didn't know if it was my own mind going crazy, or if there was something inside me, something that was manipulating me. She said, "You know what happened, Etham. You know what you did." I froze, blood frozen in my veins. The voice was clear, sharp, cold. I recognized the tone of whoever was speaking, and somehow I knew immediately what it meant. The child. She was there. "You weren't supposed to come here." The voice continued, now louder. "You opened the door, now you can't leave." It was as if something had broken inside me, as if the wall between reality and nightmare had broken all at once. Everything became blurred, and the feeling of being pulled into that darkness only increased. Wooden hands kept reaching towards me. I wanted to scream, but my throat was dry. I wanted to run, but there was no more ground beneath my feet. The voice again, closer now, almost a whisper. "I never wanted you to go, Etham, but now you're mine." And that's when I saw it. In the darkness of the tunnel, a figure appeared. It was no longer a shadow. It was no longer an indefinite presence. It was a child, with large eyes, very large, almost disproportionate to the size of the face, and pale skin stretched over thin bones. She was standing in front of me, looking at me, unblinking. I didn't know whether to scream, run, or try anything. Those hands surrounded me. The child's presence made me feel a deeper, more ancient cold, as if I were facing something that shouldn't be. something that hadn't been meant to exist in the real world. But deep down, I knew. I was already lost. The child stared at me. His eyes didn't move, didn't blink. They were too deep, too dark, like wells from which nothing escapes. I wanted to look away, but it was impossible. There was something hypnotic about that presence, as if time had stopped around her, as if the air had become denser, thicker, like an invisible water forcing me to stay, pushing me into that reality that no longer obeyed the rules I knew. And then she smiled. It was a small, restrained smile, but completely wrong. There was no joy there, nor innocence. It was a smile that seemed to have been learned, as if she had seen humans smile and tried to imitate it, a smile sewn with the fine line of madness. "Do you remember me?" she asked, her voice low, drawling, like an ancient echo reverberating inside my skull. I didn't respond. My hands shook, my body curled up in the tunnel, trapped between fear and disbelief. Everything in me wanted to go back, but I couldn't move. Her words hit me like a cold blade. Should I remember? Was this a trick, a trap of my shattered mind? Or was there something buried inside me, some forgotten memory that was now beginning to emerge? The child took a step closer. The tunnel didn't touch her. The boards seemed to curve around her, as if the space obeyed her presence. The flashlight still dangled from my hand, pointed downwards, but its flickering light barely reached the figure in front of me. It was like trying to light the bottom of an abyss with a candle. "You left me here." Her voice was not accusatory. It was a finding, fact, a hammer driving a memory deep into my chest. Who are you?" My voice finally came out, hoarse, scratching my throat like gravel. She didn't respond. He just pointed to the side of the tunnel where the wood seemed to have peeled away, revealing something behind. Yellowed paper stuck to the wall by rusty staples. Trembling, I came closer. It was a sheet of notebook paper, scribbled in crooked, shaky, childish letters. A single sentence, written several times, like a school punishment. "I promise not to leave my room. I promise not to leave my room. I promise not to leave my room." My stomach dropped. Slowly, memories began to bubble up in my mind, like something rotten coming to the surface. Fragments, flashes, sensations. A house similar to that one, a sultry summer, the cry of a child coming from upstairs, a locked door, and my father saying, "Don't go up, it's better this way." I was small. He must have been 7, maybe 8 years old, but it stayed somewhere inside me, buried beneath layers of time and forgetfulness. I remembered my mother's look, tense, avoidant, from the heavy silence during dinner. How sometimes I heard a voice singing softly, alone, on the other side of the house, an ancient, endless melody. "You heard me," the child said now, closer, so close that I could feel his cold breath on my face. But it didn't come. I started to cry, short, embarrassed, without even understanding why. But my body knew. Before my mind understood, my body already knew. That presence, that being that was someone I left behind, someone who never left there. Was it real? I muttered, almost to myself. That house, did that happen? The child knelt before me, cocking his head to the side like a curious animal. His face was more visible now. He was pale with dark patches around his eyes. His lips were cracked, his teeth were small and uneven. It wasn't natural. Don't even live. But it wasn't completely dead either. "What I am now is because of you," she said, without rancor. And that's when I understood what she wanted. Not revenge, not pain, but presence, company. She didn't want me to leave again. "You can't leave me alone again." The voice came out deeper, almost with a different tone underneath, as if something spoke through her. Behind me, the tunnel boards began to move slowly, as if breathing, and then they closed. The hands returned. Lots of. From the ceiling, the sides, the floor, all reaching out, not to hurt me, but to hold me, arrest me. I screamed. It was a primal sound of pure despair, as if he was being swallowed by his own past. I fought, I hit everything around with the piece of wood, but they kept coming, multiplying. The flashlight fell from my hand and rolled, catching a glimpse of what was behind the child, a room. There at the end of the tunnel was an old room, a broken crib, a dirty teddy bear in the corner, Drawings pasted on the wall, a fallen piece of furniture, and stains. Dark stains decorated the wooden floor like permanent shadows. And in the center, a chair, with your back to me, empty, or almost. Something moved over her, something that slowly rotated, revealing a body, skeletal, mummified, as a child, as a girl, dressed in pink pajamas, grubby with age. His head fell to the side, his arms tied by his own sleeves, the dislocated jaw. She never left that room. The figure before me was no longer the same. It grew, distorted, as if that pain accumulated over the years was now breaking all boundaries. His skin began to crack, revealing a dark light inside like cold embers. She screamed, a sound that wasn't from a throat, but from a place, a scream that the whole house seemed to repeat. And I understood. The house was hers. The tunnel, the crack, the smell, the knocks. Everything was a language, a calling, a lament that I ignored for almost my entire life. And now she wanted me there, not for revenge, but to complete what was left incomplete. She wanted a brother, and I didn't have the strength to say no. She wanted a brother. And at that moment, in that space suspended between the world of the living and what existed behind the wall, I gave in. It wasn't a conscious choice. I didn't get up and announce, "Okay, I'll stay." There were no words. There was just the break. Something in me broke. A silent snap inside the mind, like an old dam that had been cracking for years and finally opened completely. I released the piece of wood that I was still holding against my chest. He fell with a thud, muffled by the thickness of the tunnel, and rolled to the girl's feet. She looked at him, then at me. His eyes, once dark, still pools, seemed to soften for a moment. There was there a glimmer of calm, of something that almost felt like peace, but it was the peace of a place of no return. Peace from the bottom of the well. The hands that once held me now withdrew, slowly retreating into the walls like branches satisfied with the harvest. The tunnel began to widen, to breathe with me, as if he accepted that I belonged to him. And maybe in some absurd way I actually belonged. I got up slowly. My body was stiff, but not from fear, from exhaustion. An old, deep tiredness. Every muscle felt heavy as if it were carrying decades of a burden that until then I had pretended didn't exist. I didn't fight anymore. I didn't question it. Just walked. The girl offered me her hand. It was cold, cold as river rock, but firm. And as I held it, I had the strange feeling that time in there didn't move like it did in the rest of the world. Everything was thicker, slower. The house breathed with us. The footsteps echoed in the tunnel as if they were part of a silent song, repeated for years, waiting just for this moment. We crossed the tunnel, and when we passed through the gap that led to the old room, something happened. The pain disappeared, the oppression in the chest, the trembling in the fingers, the weight in the shoulders, everything dissolved. As if that place, as strange and dark and warped as it was the only place I really should be, where my presence, even late, still made sense. She released me and walked to the chair. The body was still there, small, undone. But now the room was different, clearer. The mold seemed to have receded. The shadows had softer edges. The wood stopped creaking. She approached the body gently, like someone visiting a very old tomb. Then, without looking at me, he said, "Now I can go." My heart froze. Before I could ask, before I could even form a thought, the girl began to disappear. Not in the blink of an eye, not like magic. She just faded away, like an ember that slowly goes out. Her body crumbled into dark particles, like dust floating against the dim light of the lantern lying on the floor. And the last thing I saw before it disappeared completely was a smile, a different smile, grateful. I stayed there, alone. The tunnel, in silence. The room plunged into a strange numbness. Neither fear nor peace, just an absolute void. A pause in time. And then I heard the knocks. 3 draughts on the bedroom wall, but not from the inside, outside. I ran back through the tunnel, stumbling, my knees banging against the wood, my heart racing, but this time for a different reason. I wanted to get out, finally. I needed to leave. The flashlight light still worked, shaking, wavering, but illuminating the way back. The hole I entered through was already visible, opening wide open. Natural light streaming into the eye. A room from the other side. Go up. I climbed. I came out of the wall like a newborn coming into the world, the smell of old wood now mixed with the damp dawn. I took a deep, choking breath, my hands shaking, and I listened again. The beats, but now, from inside the wall, behind me. I turned slowly. The crack I opened, the thin groove in the wall, was closing, as if the plaster itself was regenerating, molding itself, sealing back the secret that should never have been touched. I tried to stop it. I pushed. I hit with my fists. I screamed, but it was too late. The wall was solid, Lisa, intact, as if nothing had happened. I fell to my knees. The room surrounded me with its heavy silence. The tunnel, the girl, the dark room inside. Everything seemed like a feverish delirium, a nightmare, until I noticed something on the floor. The piece of paper, the same as the tunnel wall, scribbled crookedly in childish handwriting. It was written, "I promise not to leave the room." Just once. And this time signed with my name, Etham.